Former Labour Party leader from Britain, Jeremy Corbyn, has delivered his keynote speech in solidarity with the people of Palestine in Polokwane, and he was joined by other renowned pro-Palestinian speakers during a series of discussions that were aimed at finding a peaceful resolution to the war. Let's now get the latest with our reporter Katleho Nyoni, who's been covering the event and joins us live from Polokwane. So, Katleho, a very good afternoon to you once again. So, Jeremy Corbyn has just concluded his keynote address there, calling for immediate action in the issue pertaining to Gaza and less conversations.
Well, certainly indeed, Mr. Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn, has just concluded, of course, his address. He was not alone. There was also Palestinian physician Dr. Mustafa Burguti, as well as former Gaza journalist Yumna El Sayed. Well, essentially, when Mr. Corbyn took to the stage addressing the people that are attending this particular gathering into pro-Palestinian solidarity, he went as far back as the history of the establishment of the State of Israel back in 1948, essentially quoting historical events like the Balfour Treaty, saying that he sees that as, a Britain trying to essentially strip away and take away the land of the Palestinian people, mentioning that he visited both Gaza as well as the West Bank 9 times in the past. When he visited those areas in Palestine, he felt uncomfortable, but he says right now what he's seeing is atrocities on the worst scale that he's ever witnessed, mentioning also the number of people that he says dates far back since this entire situation started. As you know, it's been happening in dribs and drabs, that about 700,000 people have been displaced. Most of them now find themselves in refugee camps. Dr. Mustafa Burguti mentioning also that he witnessed children having to be amputated without having to have their limbs, their arms and legs amputated without anesthesia. So you can imagine the brutality there as he was talking. And then Yumna El Sayed, the journalist who is now in exile in Egypt, also talking to the accuracy of the information that came out following this war when it started, that the international journalists basically did not have accurate information. But Alicia, let me quickly bring in a guest who was delivering poetry that had messages about this particular war, that is Dshamilja Roshani. Thank you very much for your time on the SABC News channel. First of all, you just listened to Mr. Corbyn talking and addressing people that are in this event. What did you make of the messages that were delivered by all the speakers?
Thank you. I think it was really crucial to have everybody who was on the panel tonight here, but especially voices from Palestine, right? So I think often there's a conundrum that we find ourselves in, that people speak to a cause, but they do not listen to the people who are actually going through it themselves. So I think this was one of the main takeaways tonight, to actually listen to people who have lived through this genocide, right? But then also having international guests and perspectives from all over, really, because I think it's crucial to have a global conversation around how to stop this genocide.
Certainly, and you also are a poet. You delivered beautiful poetry there inside, which contained messages that are speaking essentially towards the end of this war, saying that there is a crisis there in Gaza. Talk to me about some of your poetry and what sort of we cannot say inspiration, but what motivates you to write poetry?
I mean, I think generally I write poetry to make sense of the world that I find myself in, right? And I think in this world that we live in right now, it becomes one of the crucial questions of how do we achieve justice? How do we change the situation we witness right now? And I think as artists, as creatives, but also just as people, we really need to use whatever skills we have been given to speak to this in whichever way. My way happens to be words, and poetry and performance, but I think we all have a role to play, and it's finding what you are blessed with and using that in the pursuit of justice.
We're seeing this war basically continuing. What do you think the role of creatives such as yourself, what role do you think you can play in sort of getting the message out there that war is not the answer?
I mean, it's tricky, right? Because it sometimes feels insignificant or insufficient what you do as a writer, as a poet, because what you do are simply using your words, right? Whereas we need concrete actions. We need people to actually, mobilize. But I do think there's a deeper importance in terms of creative work and the arts as a whole to really speak to people's emotions, right? And to conscientize people on a deeper level that is not just rational and understanding an issue, but actually feeling it and feeling how it affects us collectively as people, and seeing yourself in someone else.
Dshamilja, thank you very much. Alicia, that is our guest there, Dshamilja Roshani, who was delivering poetry with messages about this particular war, saying, of course, that there needs to be a collective global action towards ensuring that there is a peaceful resolution towards the end of this particular war. Mr. Jeremy Corbyn also in his address praising the role played by South Africa, as well as other speakers, essentially saying that South Africa continues to set an example as a nation that stands for the rights of people in Palestine. Alicia?
All right, we're going to leave it there with SABC News reporter Gaza there joining us live from Polokwane, as of course that pro-Palestine address was taking place. It's actually a gathering that was featuring multi-stakeholders that are, of course, sending that sound message to end atrocities in Gaza.